Welcome back to the Wheel of Time rewatch with me, James, your host today. I hope you've been enjoying the series so far. I'm really having a lot of fun with this. Today's episode, I finally remembered to write down the names of the episodes for the recording. This is episode 4, The Dragon Reborn. This episode, just like the third episode, is directed by Wayne Yip, so yay. And we begin the episode in a country called Gildan. This is a country that we haven't seen before. It's near the two rivers, relatively speaking, but it's not some place that we've seen before. It's not some place we've been before. We see a man being chased by 3 other men, and they're chasing him down. They throw weapons at him, and he turns around and he stops the weapons. They just stop in midair and fall to the ground. Then the scene cuts to, maybe a few minutes later, 2 of the men are down, and the third man we learn is the king of the country, Gildan, who looks at the man that he was chasing and says, "You will never be king." And the guy just looks at him and says, "What's a crown to the Dragon Reborn?" And that's when we learn that this guy has proclaimed himself to be the Dragon Reborn. The king thinks that he's gone mad and was trying to stop him, and the Dragon Reborn says, "No, I know, the dragon is either supposed to save the world or destroy it. The dragon in the past destroyed the world. I aim to save it. I aim to keep things together." And he offers the king a hand up and a hand in friendship and kind of wins him over to his side. And with that, we cut to the opening credits. I should mention that, while he's having this conversation with the king, he's also hearing voices, and you can see manifestations of people around him, like the voices that he's taught that are talking to him. So the king thinks that he's mad, and this is kind of a good indication that he has gone a little mad with the One Power. So we go to the opening credits, and then it switches to Lan, Nynaeve, and Moiraine, and they're in the camp of Aes Sedai. They're holding Logain, and if you haven't noticed already, this is the guy that was at the end of the last episode. Moiraine is being healed from her wound, so she was able to find the sisters that she needed to be able to be healed. We find out that Logain is being shielded by Aes Sedai in the camp. Liandrin of the Red Ajah wants to gentle Logain. This is the thing that Reds do. They don't really like men, because men who can channel, thousands of years ago, men who could channel destroyed the world. Reds have always held it against men. After Moiraine gets healed, she goes to where Logain is, because somebody let slip around her that he proclaimed himself the dragon. She goes and she joins in the shield, and when she does, she finds out that, oh my god, this dude he's got a lot of power in the One Power. He's really strong. While she's doing that, we see Lan is training with another warder. This warder's name is Steppen. And, obviously, from the interactions that they're having, they've been friends for a while. They've been friends for a long time. And we find out that this is Karine's warder. Karine is the leader of this little group of Aes Sedai. But as they're talking and as they're training, they discuss Lan's taste in women, because Steppen's kind of picking up on the vibes between Lan and Nynaeve. Karine comes by, and Steppen walks off with her, and they discuss Moiraine, White Tower politics. We find out that the Aes Sedai are not some monolith group. There's different factions within them. They're vying for power. After this little scene, it switches to Perrin and Egwene. After that, we switch to Perrin and Egwene, who are still with the Tinkers that they met up with at the end of the last episode. And in this scene, we just find out that the Tinkers are heading east towards Tar Valon, and they invite Perrin and Egwene to stay with them, to journey with them, and they agree to. So after that, it switches to Mat, Tom, and Rand. And they're traveling along the road. They're along the road. They're in some woods, but they're discussing the events of the town and what's going on. And Matt is showing that he's pretty distrustful of other people at this time. He thinks Tom might be up to something, because they don't really know why Tom is helping them out or anything like that. So after that little check-in, it switches back to Moraine, and she is sitting down in the cave with Logain and Alana, who is the Aes Sedai in green from the Green Ajah, sitting down next to her, and they start talking about how powerful Logain is. They can't see his weaves. They can't see him using the power at all. You do find out a little bit about the differences between like Reds and Greens and stuff like that, where Reds don't like men because they hold the breaking of the world that happened thousands of years ago against all men. Greens are kind of completely the opposite. They're the only Ajah that has multiple warders per Aes Sedai. Reds don't have warders at all, and all the other Ajahs, they only take one warder as tradition. While Moraine and Alana are sitting down discussing all this, they also talk about whether or not Logain could be the Dragon Reborn. So obviously, because Moraine's been, hunting the Dragon Reborn for a very long time, she's also interested to find out if it's possible that he could be. Then it switches to outside the cave, and Liandrin approaches Nynaeve. Nynaeve is extremely suspicious of Liandrin, to say the least. Like, she knows that Liandrin's up to something. I think the exchange goes something like, Nynaeve, that's an interesting name. I don't think I heard your whole name. And she's like, that's because I didn't tell you. What do you want? Yeah, Nynaeve is she's very short with the Aes Sedai. She obviously doesn't like them. It's part of who Nynaeve is. Once again, it goes back to Tom, Matt, and Rand. And at this point, they are in some woods, and they come across a farmhouse, and they're discussing whether or not they should try and stop there for the night, maybe hide in the barn to find a place to sleep. And the farmer kind of appears in front of them, holding a bow at them, and says, yep, you're not doing any of that. So Rand, Matt, and Tom, they try and talk their way out of it, and Rand's basically like, listen, I'll be honest, we were going to stay in your barn for the night. You wouldn't even have known that we were there. But listen, you don't want to kill us. If you wanted to kill us, you wouldn't be holding the bow that way. And the farmer's like, yeah, I don't really like kidding. I really don't like doing this either. And then he yells back to his family. He's like, is it okay with you, hun? And it switches back behind, our guys. And there's the wife and the child both holding bows at our group, and they never noticed. I thought that was a cool touch. It switches back to the Aes Sedai camp. To Liandrin and Nynaeve. This episode does switch back and forth between all the people really a lot. And this is where you actually find out that, the Reds kind of have a little crusade against men because men broke the world. You find out that the men are the one that tried to put the Dark One back in its prison during the war with the Dark One thousands of years ago. As punishment for doing that, the Dark One tainted the male half of the Source, causing all men who channel to go mad. Men go mad when they channel. Sometimes it happens right away, sometimes they can channel for years before it happens, but it always happens. And they see it as their job to stop the men. And in the middle of the discussion, Lan comes up and kind of shoos Liandrin away, or Liandrin just stops talking and leaves on her own just because Lan showed up. And Nynaeve's like, yeah, I don't like her. And Lan's like, yep, no one does. But listen, I'm going to go get some food at the fire over here. You're welcome to come join us. Or, whatever. After the invitation, it switches back to Perrin and Egwene, who are still traveling with the Tinkers at this point. And we learn a little bit about the Way of the Leaf, which is the world outlook that the Tinkers follow. They're also called the Tuatha'an. I don't know if I pronounced that right. It's a philosophy of non-violence. They try not to fight against what the wheel wants. And in this discussion, Perrin's like, well, how do you defend yourselves? And they're like, there's ways that we do it. We run away. We can stand our ground. Most people aren't really violent towards us. It's sometimes things can get bad. But Ayla, the tinker that they're talking with, have you ever seen it? Have you ever used an axe? Does the axe come away? If you're chopping wood, does the axe come away unharmed? It's the same thing with people. It's like, have you ever had a battle? Have you ever had a fight? Have you ever used an axe? And of course, with what happened to Perrin, he's listening and he's taking all of this in. And yeah, this is getting to who he is as a core of the person. As viewers, we know that this is a struggle that he's having because of what happened with his wife. And that's always at the forefront in his mind. Ayla doesn't know any of this. It's just coincidence that these words are being used. As that discussion ends, we flip over to Rand, Matt, and Tom. We find out that the family told them that, yeah, you can stay for the night, but you got to clean out the stables. And while they're doing that, Matt stops for a little bit and takes a break, and then we see him outside, and he's vomiting on the ground, and like he vomits up black liquid, and then we see the black liquid start growing a little bit. The little girl, there's a little girl here, and she shows up, and immediately she's like, hey, my mama told me to give you this and then walk away. And Matt's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you, but you're not walking away. And the little girl, just the most adorable thing in the world, says no. And Matt talks to her for a little bit because he's a little homesick, and she reminds him of his sisters. And this little girl, she gives him food that, the mom prepared. And she actually gives him a little doll to help cheer him up because she sees that he's not really feeling all that well. And then we switch to Tom and Rand. And in this discussion, you find out why Tom is helping. You find out that Tom had a nephew who learned how to channel or could channel. And he was gentled by the Red Ajah. And he wasn't able to do anything about it. So he always felt kind of helpless. And he thinks Matt is channeling because Matt is showing some of the same symptoms that his nephew was showing. Gentling is cutting them off from the one power so they can't channel anymore. And Tom says that, when that happens, people that can touch the power, when they're no longer able to, they lose all their will to live, and his nephew committed suicide. We flip over this time to Lan and Nynaeve, and they're sitting around the fire with a bunch of other warders, Stepan and Alana's 2 warders, which I don't think we ever actually learn their names. But they're having this whole discussion. We find out a little bit about Lan and his training and his background and stuff like that. And Nynaeve is just paying attention to the warders and how the warders are very open, they're very friendly. They have an ease about them as people with as far as talking to people and stuff like that. And she knows that they're very different from their Aes Sedai. But then Alana comes by and collects her 2 warders, and they all kind of go off to the tents and things like that. They kind of allude to kind of a specific type of relationship that they have, and Nynaeve is kind of looking at Lan thinking like, oh, him and Moiraine have the same type of relationship. And a little bit later, Moiraine comes by, or Lan he's like, yeah, it's time for me to go too. So he gets up and he goes off, and just kind of leaves Nynaeve there by the fire. And also, during that whole scene, you find out that, the Aes Sedai in the Old Tongue means servant of all. And the way that some of the warders view the Aes Sedai is that they have to serve all, so they need somebody to help them. They need somebody to protect them. So anyways, after Lan gets up and he leaves, it switches to the tent with him and Moiraine, and we find out that what Nynaeve was suspecting, yeah, that's not the thing. They really are just good friends. They have a mission. They're in it together, and they spend a while talking about their feelings. Moiraine talks about her feelings about losing the group, how she feels responsible. Lan's like, no, it's all my fault, and I probably shouldn't have drank because you always get emotional when I drink. I thought that was a really cool way just to kind of remind people about that without throwing it in somebody's face. So as things wind down for the night, it goes back to the Tinkers. They're singing and dancing and doing all, song, dance, food. It's great. Life is good with the Tinkers. Egwene is out dancing around, and Perrin is off to the side, kind of being mopey. And as Egwene is dancing, Aram comes up to her. They kind of step aside and they start talking a little bit about the Tinkers, and she asks about the song that was mentioned, and they're in the introduction ceremony that they did. And Aram kind of explains the song where, in ancient times, the Tinkers knew a song that brought peace and harmony to the world. And that over the course of time, they lost the song, and that, part of being a Tinker is, they're always searching for the song, because they think if they can get the song back, that to bring peace and harmony to the world, that more people would be within the way of the leaf, There would be a lot less violence, death, and destruction within the world. So it's a good thing to kind of think about. Perrin decides that he's going to help out. There was a wagon with a broken wheel, and Perrin fixes it, basically. And Isla sits down and talks to him about more about the Way of the Leaf. And you find out that the reason why she believes in the Way of the Leaf and the reason why she really wants to help other people is she once had a daughter who was killed. And she wants to make the world a better place for when her daughter is reborn. And this is an important point, is that one of the things in this world, one of the beliefs in this world, is that souls are constantly reborn into the world. So, you might not have a good life this time, but, your soul will be reborn in the world in the future. They want to do as little harm now and spread as much good in the world as they can, so that when their children's souls are reborn, it's born into a world that's a much better place to live. Also, just as a side note, this was explained way better here than it ever was in the book. Okay, so after the discussion with Isla, we switch once again, this time to Rand and Matt and Tom, and they're in the barn. They're getting ready for bed. They blow out the candle. And then we enter a dream sequence. Rand's perspective, again, just like it was in episode 2. Episode 3, we got a dream sequence with Perrin, but in this one, it's back to Rand. So in this dream, Rand is walking around and he sees Perrin standing over a dead body. And we see Matt with a bloody hand, and we see Egwene, and Egwene is grabbed by the man with the ember eyes. And Rand, of course, is startled awake. Tom is standing over Rand as Rand wakes, and he says, Matt's gone, and I don't know where he went. So they go looking for Matt, and they go into the house, and they see Matt is inside the house. But they see that the family has been killed, and Matt is just standing there in the house, staring up at like a loft, and the loft is completely covered in shadow. And Matt's just like, I see you. And out steps a Myrtle. Tom immediately grabs them and tells them to get out, and like kind of shoves them out the door. And for their part, they don't hang around. They get out and they start running. Myrtle starts approaching them, and Tom steps in the way, tells them to get out and run, and they do. And Tom fights the Myrtle. And after that, it switches to Matt and Rand and Matt, and they're running, and he trips over a body and turns around and sees that it's the little girl. And it freaks him out. Rand grabs them, they get their horses, and they book it. They hightail it out of there. We transition once again to the Aes Sedai camp. And in this one, you have Corene and Leandrin are with Logain, and they discuss gentling Logain. Of course, Leandrin wants to. Corene says no. We have rules about this sort of thing. We're going to take him back to the White Tower, and he'll be judged before the Amyrlin. Then it cuts to outside. Nynaeve is approaching Lan, and we see Lan is kind of performing a small prayer. And Nynaeve kind of waits to the side until Lan gets done and recognizes her and tells her to step forward. She asks Lan what he was doing, and he was saying, I was saying a prayer for, my family. And she says something, and Lan's like, I didn't know you knew that. And she's like, I don't know what it means. It was the last thing my parents said to me before something happened. Lan asks her if she wants to know. She nods yes, so he tells her. So it means we go into the land so our children can always hold us, and they will never be alone. And so as they are standing there having a moment, Lan starts hearing some sounds. And at this point, you find out that Logain's army arrives. The king of Yaldan led an army to come and rescue Logain. It goes inside the cave. Logain is trying his best to break free from the shielding, but he's still being held. There's a battle going on outside. The warders are fighting the army that's coming to rescue Logain. Some of the Aes Sedai are outside fighting. There's Alana. There's a couple of other Aes Sedai that are never named that are out there fighting. You see, earth erupting. You see all kinds of things happening out there. So, as Logain attempts to break free from his prison, he actually does so. Corene and Leandrin, I think, get knocked out. and he melts his prison, which was just such a cool effect. But before he does anything, Moraine comes in from the outside and says, "Good, now we can have a little bit of chat. Why should I believe you're the Dragon Reborn?" Loghain's response is, "Doesn't the wheel want people to do better?" And Moraine just looks at him and says, "The wheel doesn't want." And by that time, Corinne and Leandrin, they wake back up. All three of them link together. They link the one power together so that they can shield Loghain. They attempt to shield him, and he doesn't really take kindly to it. He attacks them, or Corinne realizes what's happening and kind of puts up a shield between, like a physical shield between Leandrin and Moraine and Loghain, but doesn't get one up in front of herself, and she winds up being killed by Loghain. Meanwhile, Steppen feels it and like just knows exactly what happens and begins hauling off to do it. Lan and Nynaeve kind of realize what's going on. They see Steppen leaving. He feels Moraine being in shock, so he takes off too. Nynaeve is in the middle of the battle, and she's just looking at all the death and destruction, and it's just got her kind of shook. It goes back into the cave, and we see Steppen, and he's in a fit of rage. He brings out his axes and he jumps towards Loghain. And prior to him showing up, Leandrin and Moraine were actually able to get the shield around Loghain, but Steppen's axes penetrate the shield. Loghain seizes on this, breaks the axes, and sends the shards of the axes flying at everybody else in the cave. Lan had already come in. Everybody winds up getting hurt really bad. Lan gets sliced across the throat and is bleeding out. Nynaeve comes in, sees what's happened, looks at Lan, and goes Super Saiyan. Like, she just starts screaming, and this light just fills the room. So bright that even Loghain is shielding his eyes and everything, and he makes a comment about being brighter than 1,000 suns. And she heals everyone that's not already dead because she's Nynaeve, and she is awesome. And with everybody being healed, all the Aes Sedai there link together, and they just straight up gentle Loghain. They take away his access to the one power, and that's how this episode ends. It was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it. Like I mentioned earlier, the pacing of this episode was really fast. It switched between the three groups of people. It never felt like there was ever a dull moment. There was a lot of exposition in here. This was a well-packed, well-paced episode. Now that we're done with episode 4, why don't you tell me what your favorite scene was? I mean, I really shouldn't have to explain that my favorite scene was Nynaeve healing everybody. Everything about that scene I love. And yeah, we'll pick this up again with episode 5. In the meantime, if you like the recap, leave a like for me, maybe subscribe. I really, really appreciate it. And with that said, have a good day.